this particular program, but just CTE in general, and the sort of unique transition that it continues to be in a post-LCFF world is kind of where our proposal came from to, again, provide a little bit of an incentive and encouragement for CTE programs to be sustained and to be continued.
Okay, good. Yeah, you know, there's a challenge there with getting districts to pool their resources for something like this, and I'd like to make sure we figure out a creative way to continue financing this important model program.
Thank you, Senator Allen. I think one last question for you all, and then we'll move on to the third panel. This would be for Ms. Collins or Ms. Hyman. Have you all assessed the Career Pathways Trust and Career Technical Education Pathways Initiative success, and given that they're both about to sunset?
We've not done that assessment, no.
And remind me, is there any requirement that they be assessed, that we determine what we got for our investment?
Well, there is reporting requirements, but we've not gone over those in great detail. But they require kind of a catalog of the types of pathways that have been developed through the process for the CTE Pathways Program, which is that $48 million program. And for the Career Pathways Trust, there are also reporting requirements. The first Career Pathways Trust was given in 13-14, so I'm not sure if that has been released yet.
Our notes show that the Career Technical Education Pathways Initiative helped build almost 5,800 partnerships, developed over 1,000 courses, provided trainings or externships to 36,000 staff at high schools and community colleges, and served approximately 750,000 students. The reason I ask the question is, given their approaching sunset, can we determine this was a worthy investment, and would we want to continue it?
It does appear to have been a worthy investment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be earmarked moving forward. It could be put into a broader attempt of coordination. So it's not just limited to K-12 and community colleges, but it could also include other workforce agencies or programs as well. It's integrating within a smaller system when we want to think more broadly. Would be our stance.
Very good. Other questions? We thank you all for joining us today. I know we'll be continuing these conversations in Budget Subcommittee. So, colleagues, we'll move on to our third and last panel, which is the current efforts to develop California's workforce, and we invite up Dr. Deborah Jones, Dean of Workforce and Economic Development Division at California's Community College Chancellor's Office, along with Monique Ramos, Government Affairs, Department of Education, Russ Weichel, Director at Career and College Transition Division of the Department of Education, and also Annette Smith-Doring, Workforce Development Program Manager at Sutter Health. Thank you. I believe we'll begin with Dr. Jones.
Good afternoon.
Make sure your red button is on.
There it is. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and members. I'm going to talk about 3 different items today. One is the Doing What Matters campaign that we've been working on in the Workforce and Economic Development Division. The second is the Board of Governors Task Force. And the third is adult education. I've provided you with a handout. The first 4 pages are slides of data. Most of that data has been covered by Mr. Rainey earlier presentation. I'd like to begin with page number 4. And at the top slide, you can see, even though there's a great need, it looks like this. It's a bar graph of CTE investments in the community college system over the last 12 years. And it's by region. If you look, you can see that even though there is a great need that has been talked about today, our investments have actually decreased in career technical education. So I came on board at the community colleges about 3.5 years ago, Prior to that, I was State Director of Adult Education at the California Department of Education. And prior to that, I ran an adult school and also was an operator of a one-stop. So I've worn both a workforce and economic development hat and an adult education hat. You can't have one conversation without having the other. And so that's what we want to have today. The bottom slide on page 4 is talking about administrative fixes. Vice Chancellor Von Quinlivan came to the Chancellor's office about 4 years ago, and we began an evaluation of where our monies were being spent and what projects we had. We have 3 main funding streams in the Workforce and Economic Development Division. One is the Carl Perkins dollars that we share with CDE. We get about 60 million of those, about half. The SB 1070, or the Governor's Career Technical Education Pathways, $48 million. And then our EWD program was about $23 million. And we mapped these. The first thing we did was do a crosswalk of what was allowed under each of these funding streams, what was not allowable. And we created a common set of metrics that span from 8th grade through further education and training, and recognized that these were not disparate funding sources, but indeed, like a Venn diagram, there were many points of intersection and strong points of intersection. But what had been happening traditionally is that these monies went out in silos and to fund wonderful projects, especially with our SB 1070 dollars. They funded great projects, but they funded projects that would end when those dollars sunsetted. So we started with the SB 1070 funds. We had 158 projects when I came on board. Knowing that those funds were going to sunset, we began to look at, instead of doing an articulation agreement between a single college faculty member and a single high school instructor, what if we began to look regionally at what was happening? And so those projects evolved into a more regional-based, sectorial-based, and larger amounts of funding to fewer projects, looking at sustainability and capacity. And I can talk a little bit more about that if you have some questions later. The bottom slide is the grading that we actually did. So when we put together the common metrics, we looked at the common issues with all of those funding streams, and with the authority we had to make administrative fixes, we began to target funding, and if you'll see page 5, at a regional level, and that the top shows the regions, and at a sectoral level. So what we did, there are 10 industry sectors that were identified by the Regional Economies Project here in California. We asked each region to choose, using labor market information, what their 3 priority sectors and their 2 emerging sectors are. And we began to target the resources from those 3 funding streams into those sectors in those regions. So instead of having a peanut butter effect and being unable to really know the impact or even to document the impact, we targeted funds. We've created accountability system in the launch board that is reading the metrics and began to look at outcomes and impacts rather than just projects and programs. We did as much as we could administratively, but we have been able to document impact. At the same time, 3 years later, the Board of Governors has taken on a task force, and on page 6 you'll be able to see that the scope of the Board of Governors' work, it's to provide flexibility, responsiveness to employers, to promote multiple partnerships, and student portability, so that when a student earns an articulation agreement or credits at one college, that's portable to other certificate, either to other colleges or in training. There are several task force processes going on. I hope that you will have an opportunity in your area to attend. There were regional college conversations in November, December, and January, and right now there are strong town hall workforce meetings. Most of these, the last one, there were almost 150 participants. Many of them, about 70%, were employers and industry. So we're getting a lot of feedback from a lot of different places. In these task force meetings, then there's a group of about 30 people on a task force, are meeting through July and will make recommendations back to the Board of Governors. We've talked about at the community college office, we did what was in our authority administratively with those funding streams. But for something to be sustainable and to build on an existing capacity, it needs a policy or recommendation to follow that. And that's what we're hopeful, that throughout this Board of Task Force initiative, we will understand and learn more about the recommendations and be able to bring forth some sustainability and policy to impact those recommendations. On page 7, you see the goal of the task force. Again, this goal mirrors what you heard earlier about the workforce, from the Workforce Investment Board and EDD, to increase individual and regional economic competitiveness by providing California's workforce with relevant skills and quality credentials that match employer needs and fuel a strong economy. On the bottom of page 7, you can just see the sequencing of California Community College initiatives, beginning with the Restoration of Student Access, the Student Success Initiative, the Doing What Matters campaign, which was a division-wide campaign, and now the Board of Governors Task Force on Jobs and the Economy, which is an agency-wide campaign. Beginning on page 7, Adult Education Regional Planning is part of this. And 7, 8, and 9 provide some data. This is from the report. This is information that we have rolled up from the 70 consortia reports that we've received from the adult education. By the way, all of those plans are posted online on our website, and the very last slide has 2 different websites. One is the Doing What Matters website, where you can see far more information about the task force, about what we're doing in our division. And then the other website is the AB86 website, which has every single consortia plan on it, resources, and we've been doing webinars. We've probably done 60 different webinars with a host of experts, stakeholders, and consortia members, including the Department of Finance has done, and they will be on tomorrow's webinar as well. We do Friday noontime webinars. Every webinar is archived and posted on that website. So you can, the data simply reiterates what you've heard: a decline in CTE funding, a decline in adult education services, and some of this data is broken down by community college provider and K-12 provider. You can see the greatest decline in numbers of students served and in the number of providers has been on the K-12 side due to the flexibility issues. At this time, there are approximately 214 to 220 K-12 adult school district providers. That's down from about 375 several years ago. So the need outstrips the capacity. And in the bottom of page 9, the need has been calculated by census data, and you can see at the bottom of that slide actually where the need was calculated from. There's a great need. You can then see in the same graph the enrollments for the consortia, and then the final column is the percent of need that is currently being met. $500 million is not enough to meet the need that is out there. $753 million 8 years ago, 6 years ago, was not enough. But the opportunity that we have been given to work differently and to work to align between the community college system and the K-12 system will have far more greater impact in serving the needs of California adult learners. I hope that $500 million is just the beginning of the investment in California's adult learners. One of the challenges, I'll talk about challenges in a minute. Let's go to the recommendations. On the top of page 10, from the experts, from the stakeholders, the work group, some recommendations have come forth, and one is to increase service levels to meet demand. Service levels means we need more teachers, we need more full-time faculty, we need more counselors, we need more facilities, to your point, Senator Nelson, earlier. We need to improve programming to better prepare students for post-secondary and transition to workforce. That means that our programs need to align with labor market need. There needs to be an alignment and a match between what is being offered, what students are taking, and their readiness for a job in that area when they get out. We also need to provide academic, social, and financial supports to lower barriers. This can be childcare, transportation, wraparound services, counseling services. It's services by that group of people that serve on the allocation board that you heard about. The fourth bullet is to align assessments. It is not assets, there is a typo. It's to align assessments between providers for placement. Currently, there is a host of assessments being used, and they're just not aligned. The work group met together, the stakeholders met. The answer is not a single assessment, the answer is a multiple measures, but it is an alignment between these assessments so that we know when a student leaves one program that they're ready for the next program, or if they leave one institution, the K-12 provider institution, that when they go to the community college system, they're prepared. When I was in the field, we actually, when I was an adult school director, actually worked very closely with College of the Redwoods, and we took their placement assessments and our placement assessments and made certain that when students left our program that they could pass those assessments. So they went to College of the Redwoods. They didn't have to repeat in Dev Ed things that they had already learned or should have learned at the community college system. Our consortia are working closely together. Our faculty and our instructors are key to the success of this work. And there have been broad and deep conversations, dialogues, and workings. One consortia in the Central Valley spent 2 days with 50 faculty members and instructors working to align curriculum so that students, they know that when students leave one, they're better prepared for the next. Excuse me. We need to develop a common accountability approach, and we've talked much about that today. We are not going to develop a common accountability system in a vacuum of the current work that is being done with the WIOA folks, or the current MIS system on the community college side, or the current CASA system. We need to be reading the data from all of those, and we need to do this together so that we have this common set of metrics, accountability measures, performance indicators. There's more work to be done here, and you had asked, I think, Senator Leno, what's the status of the work being done? Has the decision been made exactly what to measure? Not at this time. That's the work that is currently being done with work groups and groups of experts. We also need to maintain and extend structures for ongoing regional coordination. And this is not our recommendation. This is the recommendation from the field. Just this morning, I received a phone call from Miracosta down in San Diego, and they talked about the benefits. They called about a report. That's not, but I have to tell you, while you're on the phone, this has been a wonderful experience. We have had conversations, she said, that we have never had in the past. In fact, what they are looking at, Miracosta has received much of the money. They've been a sole adult education provider in that area for many years. They've received most of the money. She talked about a district very close to the border that has a huge need, but only receives $300,000 to run an adult education program. Well, if the need is there, but you're not working as a region, you can't meet that need with a $300,000 budget. And so this is the kind of perspective and the kind of look that they're doing, the kind of evaluation that all of our consortia are doing to look at need. The plans that you can go online and look at for each of your regions, our consortia have done an excellent job of evaluating what the need is, what current providers are doing, not only what the K-12 and the community college providers are doing, but what the workforce folks are doing, what the libraries are doing, what the CBOs are doing, the community-based organizations in their region. And then they've mapped need to services and identified that gap. And the conversations are around how do we fill that gap with limited resources. There are struggles and there are challenges. We talked a little bit about the allocation committee. I hear the continuum of what a great idea, too. This is not going to work. I also hear from folks who are beginning to navigate the proposals that are set forth. They talk about an allocation committee. They ask us at the state level, well, why don't you set up an allocation board that mirrors what we're supposed to do at the local level? They also say, there's an allocation committee, but we need also advisories or task committees, some sort of other board made up of faculty, instructors, students, parents, the people who are not necessarily called out on this allocation committee. And so some consortia are looking at putting together structures that will align and talk with each other and work together to better reflect the needs of their region. There have been challenges in governance. it's been very difficult to begin to work at a regional level. We did this, as I said earlier, with the workforce investment, the workforce and economic development dollars. That was hard. Every college had been used to receiving their dollars and saying, this is my money, I make the decisions, I plan. We have now been targeting funds to the region, and the region has to come together to determine how best to meet their needs. It's been a 3-year process. There's still some challenges with that process, but we've just begun to ask our adult education providers to begin to look regionally and determine need, come to the table with resources to best meet that need. There's some difficulties. It's hard to give up money, even if it may be for a greater need. It's hard to come together with cultures and entities that have been territorial or that in the past they have different languages. They're now being asked to come together and learn about what each other do and to do it together to best meet the needs of a range of students, from far below English levels to students needing CTE. I want to talk just...
Dr. Jones, I'm going to have to ask you to conclude.
I am done, and I'll
Are
take
you sure?
questions.
But I hope you can stick around because I'm sure we'll have some questions.
Absolutely.
Very sobering presentation, comprehensive, but very sobering. And thank you for putting all of this very detailed information together for us. Director Ramos.
Good afternoon. Monique Ramos on behalf of the California Department of Education. So I'm just going to provide a high-level overview of the CTE programs that the department provides and who we serve, both in the sense of the K-12 community in adult and in our student population. And then Russ Weichel will be going through kind of the strengths and the weaknesses of the programs we have and more in depth. So first off, one of the programs that we are in our second year of funding is the Career Pathways Trust. We worked very closely with the Community College Chancellor's Office, with the Workforce Investment Board to develop the RFP, to read those applications, and then ultimately to award those applications. This was done together with the 3 agencies. Through that process, we really did see increased local collaboration between K-12 districts, community colleges, and local industry. In addition, we administer the Ag Incentive Grants, which has very strong linkages between K-12 local education agencies and industry. We also administer, as part of the community colleges' career partnership academies, part of their CTE career pathway program, we administer the career partnership academies. There are about 140 of those academies throughout the state. And as part of those dollars, the department has been able to work closely with UC in order to get over 12,000 CTE classes recognized as A through G aligned. We're now continuing to do that work and to focus more on the A through F requirements, which are more of the academic requirements, to ensure that students really have that opportunity to take CTE and still have the ability to go to college, a 4-year college, if that's their choice. And I just want to take a note to kind of note there's a little bit of difference in CTE goals at K-12 education. Our goal is, generally speaking, to connect students with careers. The vast majority of students aren't certain what they're going to do yet, and the goal is to expose them to careers but keep all the options open for them to consider what they will do post-high school. And often there are some programs that do in fact offer certifications to K-12 students, but the majority of them have to go on to some level of post-secondary education. Finally, the department has recently been increasing collaboration with the Chancellor's Office and the administration of the Carl D. Perkins CTE improvement dollars. And a quick snapshot on adult education and who historically K-12 has served. So essentially, the K-12 agencies have served essential instruction, so such as basic and remedial education, as well as citizenship classes. We oftentimes, in the sense of K-12 agencies, act as a bridge in order to get adults up to basic levels in K-12 education, in order for them to then go on to advanced vocational education or college level coursework. And lastly, I just want to bring up a couple points about assessment and accountability because I think it's very important. I do want to remind the legislature that in March of 2016, the superintendent has a report due to you about the forward movement of an assessment system and what else, if other assessments should or should not be included in the new CASP assessment system. Additionally, at a Senate education hearing a few weeks ago, we, along with the state board, had a long conversation about API and that perhaps it is time to start look at aligning our state accountability system with the 8 state priorities and LCAPs. And that work and those conversations are also beginning right now.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos. Dr. Weichel.
Good afternoon. Russ Weichel, Director of Career and College Transition Division at the California Department of Education. As we've all heard today, we've seen a greater collaboration between really 3 state agencies over the last couple of years, one being California Workforce Investment Board, Chancellor's Office, community colleges, and the Department of Education. And this collaboration has really come together through implementation of the Career Pathways Trust, for one, AB 86 with the adult ed effort there, and certainly with the federal effort of the reauthorization of the Workforce Innovations and Opportunity Act have brought those agencies together. But I wanted to take a moment and really review some of our efforts through the department as related to career technical education and adult school. First of all, I'd like to let you know that our superintendent's identified career technical education as a priority during his 2nd term, among other things, but that certainly is one. And then he's also established the Career Readiness Initiative that really guides the work in my division and includes adult education in that initiative. Going and looking at the Career Pathways Trust, it's not only strengthened our collaboration but among the 3 state agencies, and as we've heard, those 3 state agencies being involved in crafting the RFP, actually reading and scoring applications, and we also conducted oral interviews for the $15 million applicants, and all 3 agencies actually participated as panelists during those interviews. So not only have we seen that, but we've really seen energizing of local districts to come together and form regional collaboratives in relation to Career Pathways Trust. And I think one key point I might make is that during the process of the oral interviews, it was quite obvious. In fact, many of the panel or competitors for those grants made the statement that whether we get this grant or not, the one thing this has done is brought us together in a regional way. And I think we're seeing the same thing happening through AB 86 on the adult ed effort. We've heard the same kinds of comments, is that this effort has really brought us together. So this collaborative effort is not just a state effort. It's really expanded into local and regional levels and creating that stronger collaboration. We've continued our efforts, as Monique suggested a moment ago, working with the Chancellor's Office, as we've done for many, many years with the Carl D. Perkins Career Technical Education Improvement Act. Once that's reauthorized by the federal government, we'll even step up those efforts because we'll be required to do a new state plan, and that actually requires us to collaborate, but we continue to collaborate with them on that effort. The department is excited and encouraged by the governor's budget proposal to provide funding, specific funding for career technical education programs, and we realize that the governor's proposal helps to fill that gap between really the demise of the maintenance of effort required for the ROPs and the full implementation of local control funding formula. There's a few gap years there, and without this money, even those districts who want to offer career technical education may not have the funds necessary to do so. So we recognize that. We're thrilled with the governor's decision to continue funding the CTE Pathways program. Those are really started out with SB 70 and now the SB 1070 funds. We're looking forward to that for another year, but those funds have helped the state in many, many ways, and not necessarily just individual local districts, but in a statewide effort. For instance, we spend approximately $600,000 a year with the UC system to implement what we call the California's Curriculum Institutes, which really it brings together academic teachers, career technical education teachers to develop high quality career technical education courses that meet an A through F requirement, not just the G requirement. Without those funds, that effort would not be possible. We also spend money from those funds on what we call the health capacity grants. And there's a need, not only in this state, but nationwide, for more healthcare workers. And we've been able to use those funds to build our healthcare education programs to bring more healthcare workers into the workplace. We've also used those funds because the lack of any other funds to help support our career technical student organizations. And these career technical student organizations are integral to the career technical education program students take. They play an important role in developing leadership and professional and interpersonal skills necessary for students to be successful, not only in the workplace, but in life. And then, in addition to all of that, we support about 144 additional California Partnership Academies that we're unable to fund through the separate Prop 98 funding for California Partnership Academies. Moving on to adult education, Career 12, adult education has a long history of providing essential instruction to adult learners in the areas of adult basic education, remedial education, citizenship, and we also provide opportunities for adults who may have missed the chance or never had the opportunity to actually obtain a high school diploma or its equivalency. The K-12 adult education system currently is an important bridge with over 800,000 California adults working to gain entry into post-secondary education training and sustainable employment. As such, the K-12 adult education system addresses the needs of adult learners with basic skills, education, and serving those with education far below the level necessary to meet college entrance requirements. So we feel that K-12 adult education does provide an important role in the overall education system within California. We encourage, or we're glad to hear that the governor's supporting that with these funds. We really look at K-12 adult education as like the fourth leg in the education chair. So we have K-12 adult education, community colleges, K-12 education, and the universities. Just to answer, maybe to address some of the issues brought up earlier, I know Senator Nielsen brought up the question regarding the governor's incentive grant and whether ag programs would be eligible for those funds. And yes, they would be eligible for those funds. The fact that they're getting separate ag incentive grant funds does not disqualify them necessarily for the CTE incentive grant funds. Both of those projects are administered through my office, and so we can assure you that they would be eligible for those funds. Senator Roth brought up, and he's gone now, but Senator Roth brought up the question about veterans and what's happening in veterans. And one of the things we've recognized in K-12 education is the lack of teachers in career technical education. There's that stream of teachers coming in to teach career technical education is dwindling to a drop. And so we're really focusing, or we want to focus on developing teachers. And one way to do that is through the CTE credential, or designated subject credential, where we look at individuals who have experience in a particular occupation or area. So we've had discussions in the office about putting out a contract to an LEA, a county office, or higher ed, to develop a stream of teachers for us and provide education. And we're actually looking at giving preference to veterans, because veterans are well trained in the military. They come out with occupational skills. They would meet the minimum qualifications and oftentimes don't know that opportunity is available to them for a designated subject or that subject credential.